Hello there, my name is Kahan Desai and I'm doing my third year of computer science right now, and I want to take this video I want to make this video for presenting to you a small work that I have done over the recent couple of weeks in shell scripting using PowerShell. And yeah, to give you a bit of context, this was basically to automate my CS course of deleting those debug folders and directories from my project files, which is always annoying, and it's like just takes a lot of boring time. And to quote Fireship at this moment, that hey, if something takes 5 minutes and it's boring, why not spend 5 hours automating it? And at least that's the principle how most of the programmers go by. So, without wasting any further time, let's dive straight into it. So, this is the main repository, shell scripts for automating my CS course, which essentially only contains one script for now, which is DeleteFolder, and that too only in one language, which is only one script, which is PowerShell. So that's my just the looks of the project. But to give you some idea of what was the purpose of it, was that I was moving around my semester 1 to 5 folders into my hard drive, and it had a lot of debug folders and directories that took a lot of space. And so I realized that I can either go into them and manually delete them. Now, as a part of our assignments, we kind of have to delete debug directories anyways, which also is sometimes annoying. And I heard the professor saying one day that a lot of students don't do that and they lose grades, but it's pain for the professor regardless, because they have to go into those project files and delete those directories, which I related with. And I was like, yeah, I agree. I had the same pain when I wanted to move those folders around, and it just takes too much space. And so if there was an easy way to delete them, why won't I use it? So I tried to look for some scripts. I tried to learn PowerShell a bit, and eventually what I came down to was something that looked like right here. That looked like this. Essentially so. I mean, more like this, with remove here, that's all. But the thing was that I was executing the same line over and over for different assignments all the time, for different folders all the time, and I was annoyed. So I was like, okay, why don't I put this script or at least the command in a script file and then run it every time I want to do something. So I did that, and the initial file was created, initial script was created, which was basically just this, kind of like this. Yeah, just look more like this. So then I was like, okay, so I'm able to, let me just make sure that I am okay. So I'm able to now do what I was anyways doing in a more easier way. But then I wanted to add more error handling. I wanted to add more functionalities, or just wanted to play around with how I can modify this to make it more more flexible to use, and more diverse as well in terms of functionalities. And at that point is when I began with just this confirmation message, because I was like, I'm deleting something, I need to be aware of what I'm deleting. So that was that. And then I was like, okay, I also store these projects, I archive them many times in zip files, and I want to delete them as well. So I made this script where I could also delete from zip files. And something I realized actually is that zip files are not really paths, and so you can't just give it a path of zip file and then ask it to go into it in recursion, because recursive delete from it, because zip files are the end of the path. Then and there they are files, and hence it can't access the folders, the directories beyond that. and so I had to realize that I had to extract those zip files and then zip them back up on the same location. And that is when I learned how to use system.io within the script. Kind of cool. And then also create a temporary path for those extracted files and folders from the zip files, and then compress them again into the same zip file with the same name into the same location. Sounds simple, right? Well, it was not bad. It was pretty cool. And then one thing I realized is that I could also put those lines of code, or you can say those, where is it? I could also put all this stuff into a function, and that's what I did in this file, where I put them both in two different functions for zip files and for non-zip files. And then I also managed to add like a progress bar, which essentially just is a measure of how many files have been covered so far. So that's kind of cool to implement as well, because I wanted to make it look like any normal command that I use regularly, right? Like, for example, all the time we use npm, and all these fancy command line UI they have set up, and I wanted to use something like that. I wanted to make it look like something like that. So that's why I made a progress bar as well. And that is when I was also creating side by side the x64, which is the same as the .vs for .vs folders. And then I realized that why am I making a separate script for every single folder name? I can just make folder name a parameter and create a simple command called DeleteFolder. Simple as that. And that's what I came up with eventually. And basically the same thing that I did before, except this time the folder name was a parameter. But then I wanted to add more. Flexibility and just more control over the command, and just wanted to play around with how I can add more parameters, honestly. So that's when I realized I could log. Yeah, that's very important, because I'm deleting files and folders, so I need to be able to log whatever I'm doing. That is one thing. And then I also wanted to let the user know of whatever was happening, so I added these output statements at every step of the way wherever I felt necessary. And then logging was there wherever I felt that okay, this is important to log, which was also a bit extra than what was in the output. But then I also realized I am adding some outputs, I'm adding some logging, why not also add some verbose? So I added verbose too. And as it turned out, I realized that I'm adding the verbose at the same location where I'm adding the logging statements. So I made them into one function, kind of one command. 1 second, where is it? Here. Yeah, I made it into one function, write message, and essentially it just does the same thing as it did before for logging, but also it checks for verbose flags, if at all, wherever they are, and it allows for any verbose output as well. So now wherever you see write message is a combination of logging and verbose if the verbose flag is set true, like in this case. Okay, so that's about logging. And what about the next parameter? Yeah, there was also I wanted to customize how I am deleting things, right? I wanted to have more control over it, and so I want to choose if I don't want to delete anything from zip files. At least one thing I realized is that extracting and compressing takes a long time from zip folders, from zip files, and so I wanted to have the option of sometimes skipping over it, because I am aware that there is no zip files that need cleanup. So I wanted to have a parameter for that, which is very simple to implement. It's just a flag, nothing more than that. But then I also wanted to be able to exclude a specific path or a specific folder that I don't want the command to touch, right? I want her to have more control. Again, that's all about control. And so that's when I implemented this array of exclude paths, wherein I also thought of this case where copying and pasting paths is kind of not convenient, right? Because you can't always remember all the paths, and you don't want to always go back and copy and paste copy and paste, and at this point, why are you even using this script? This defeats the purpose. So that is why I made this, so that you can also have folder names, and it would automatically fetch the paths from the folders and put them into the array of excluded paths, and so basically treat them just the same. And then whenever I recurse through the folders for deleting, I always have a flag for checking if they are excluded or not. So right here, if they are, then I skip, otherwise I continue I continue deleting them. Same with, I think, zip files. I still check if, first of all, if where is it? Yeah, right here. If they are a part of excluded paths or not. If they are, then I don't delete them, I skip them, simple as that. And then somewhere here I also added for zip, no zip, yeah, here. So here is where I implement the no zip parameter. It's very simple, nothing too complicated. It's just more about learning how cool it is to work with PowerShell command, shell scripting, and just stuff like that. And then at the end, recently I was making the help menu, where I also learned some tricks of UI in shell scripting, where I could define a color, I could skip a line, or have not a new line, and then skip a line by using this. So yeah, that was pretty cool to learn as well. And that is where I also learned how to give this warning messages if the user does not input the necessary parameters, which is right here. Now one way you could do it is the way I did it before, is by having this as a mandatory parameter. But if you do that, then the PowerShell will essentially prompt the user and force the user to input that parameter. But because I was implementing the help parameter or the help function, I wanted to make sure that the user can use the command without inputting those mandatory parameters for simply asking help, for simply looking for the help menu. And so it was only possible if I remove the mandatory requirement from here and add them in a function or a if statement right here. So yeah, that was pretty cool to learn as well. How to work with the functions like these is not a white space. It's very similar to any other programming language. Honestly, it doesn't look any different. Most of it is the same, honestly. It's just about thinking in that sense and being able to structure your command in a way that a normal command would work. So yeah, now my command also has this help menu, and you can access it. You can also view it in my GitHub repository. I am working on adding bash version of that, and I'm also working on making it an executable. And then also maybe potentially I want to have a GUI, which I am kind of inclined towards because I am not a command line guy, and so I would love to have a GUI that someone can use, who doesn't know how to use command line very well. But yeah, that's about my latest work. As I keep adding, I'll keep you posted. Thanks a lot for your time and listening to me.